The signature dish at one of New York City's best and oldest steakhouses is the legendary Mutton Chop from Keens. Weighing around 2 pounds, the cut of meat is massive, but I just had to try it.
It's a beautiful day here in New York City. Right now I'm at Bryant Park and I am feeling great because earlier in the day for lunch I got to go to my personal favorite steakhouse in all of NYC, the legendary Keens. I went to Keens last year and had their T-bone steak and it was excellent, but I really enjoyed the whole overall experience of dining at the restaurant, from its incredible history, its decor, the service was really good, and I really enjoyed all the other food I had as well, from the cream spinach and that fantastic key lime pie I had for dessert. However, I still haven't had the dish that Keens is most famous for, their mutton chop. Mutton is aged lamb, and you hardly ever see it in this country, at least served in the form that Keens does it. So that was my mission today, to dine at Keens and consume their legendary mutton chop. In fact, they even refer to the mutton chop on their menu as legendary. So this was my lunch at Keens.
Since 1885, Keens has been a New York City institution for meat. The establishment was founded by Albert Keene and stemmed from the theater group of the Lambs Club. Located in Midtown Manhattan, Keens is a pretty sizable restaurant with multiple floors and rooms. Just like on my first visit, I was seated in the Lincoln Room.
I just got seated. I got somewhat of a sense of deja vu. I'm seated in the exact same table that I was in last year.
Visually, there's so much eye candy on the walls and even ceilings of Keens. In fact, the restaurant maintains the largest collection of churchwarden pipes in the world. Specifically in the Lincoln Room, there are some true museum-quality pieces like the blood-stained playbill that was supposedly held by Abraham Lincoln when he was assassinated, and a handwritten version of the Gettysburg Address. One should definitely spend a little time appreciating some of these treasures located at Keens. But of course, food was my #1 priority. While I knew that I was going to get the mutton chop, I still enjoyed looking over the menu. In fact, I recently acquired a Keens menu for my collection that's supposedly from 1976, and the mutton chop, even back then, was heavily promoted as the signature dish of the restaurant. It was also much more affordable, costing only $11.25, while today the mutton chop will set one back $68. However, as a lunch special, there's a taste of mutton option available for $29, which I feel is a great deal. But I was going all the way with the full, legendary mutton chop. Although I did take advantage of one lunch special, the freshly made ginger ale, and I really enjoyed it. It was definitely a few steps above the canned variety. The flavors were nice and fresh and well balanced in terms of the sweetness. Plus, the beverage paired really nicely with my food. Before my mutton chop was presented, I helped myself to the bread. They were the same type of rolls and butter that I had on my last visit. Once again, it was good bread and butter. However, I knew that I had a big piece of meat coming my way, so I limited myself to just one roll for the moment. In fact, I didn't even get an appetizer. I was a little apprehensive that the mutton chop would be too much even for me. A lot of people either split it or just don't finish it. But I didn't have to wait too long to find out if I could conquer the entire dish as my mutton chop was presented.
The mutton chop has arrived and it is massive, but it looks so good and it smells really good too. I cannot wait to dig into this.
There's no question about it, the chop is a big piece of meat. In fact, the diner to the left of me was discussing with his waiter on whether to get the taste of mutton or the full cut. My dish might have scared the hell out of him because after seeing what I ordered, he went with the taste of mutton. Simply put, the mutton chop is epic. Mutton is in fact aged lamb. The definition of what is considered to be mutton does vary from country to country, but at least in the US, mutton is typically lamb that is over a year in age. I was so excited to consume the mutton chop from Keens that I specifically wore a Brooks Brothers polo shirt that featured their classic and somewhat disturbing logo of a hanging sheep. Indeed, I try my best to match my clothing to the food that I'm eating. At last, the moment that I've been waiting for arrived. It was time to try Keens' legendary mutton chop, and it was amazing.
That is so good. There is so much flavor in this mutton chop. It is excellent.
Now, a lot of people expect a dish to be gamey, but that's not really the case. There's a slight gaminess, of course, but the flavor is pretty well rounded. If one is fond of lamb, then they'll most likely love the mutton chop, and I loved that mutton chop. However, the various parts of the dish had different flavors. The cut is basically the saddle portion of the animal. On the sides are the sort of belly flaps, while the tenderloin is in the center. The flaps on the sides were delicious. They were pretty fatty, but so tasty and luscious, it was almost like eating bacon. The meat towards the center of the chop was incredible as well. It was so tender and juicy. In fact, I was worried about splashing the table of diners seated next to me since juices were flying everywhere as I dissected the mutton. Thankfully, my waiter did give me some good tips with regards as to the best way to cut the meat. As far as the temperature, I requested a medium rare, which was exactly what I got. The mutton was also seasoned to perfection. However, accompanying the dish was a jar of mint jelly, which was made in-house. Normally, I'm not the biggest fan of adding sauce or toppings to steak and the like, but I'm always willing to give it a try. The jelly was strong, it had a sweet, minty flavor, and it can almost double as mouthwash, but it was really pleasant. The fresh sweetness was a nice contrast to the rich and savory mutton. I liked it, but I still prefer to have the meat just as it is. In addition to the mutton was a decent-sized portion of escarole. I love meat, but to have a vegetable on the side is just perfect. The escarole was delicious. It's by no means an afterthought on the plate.
The escarole on the plate is really nice. After all this meat, it's really good to consume something that's, well, great.
It had great flavor and texture while maintaining the appropriate amount of salt. Plus, I loved how it absorbed some of those wonderful juices from the mutton. In addition to the chop, I did get a side. I went with a half order of the mashed potatoes. I really appreciate the fact that Keens offers half-size portions of their sides unlike some steakhouses. Really, I don't see how hard it is to simply not plate as much food for a damn side dish. Regarding the mashed potatoes, they were pretty solid. Now I've certainly had better examples of the dish, but Keens' potatoes did the trick. They had a nice flavor and texture. Together with my mutton chop, side, and ginger ale, I was enjoying a great lunch, but as I was nearing the end of the mutton, that's when things got complicated.
I'm getting towards the end of the chop here. It's getting a little more difficult to cut. I just want to get every last morsel of this delicious meat, but it's quite a challenge. All my knife skills are coming out to play in full force.
The mutton chop was just so good. I wanted to make sure that I got every morsel of meat off the bone. Cutting those final bites were difficult, but they were worth it. When I finished, the bone wasn't 100% clean, but it was as good as I could do.
I absolutely dominated that mutton chop. I mean, it is pretty big, but it's not as intimidating as it looks. It was very good. I am, I guess, somewhat full, but I still have room for dessert, so I'm going to take a look at the menu.
Keens definitely has a good variety of options for dessert. One interesting facet from that 1976 menu, which I showcased earlier, is that the restaurant once offered fruit jello for dessert. Now that's something you probably wouldn't see in a fine dining restaurant these days. Anyways, I decided to get a slice of the Lady M chocolate cake. The dessert was beautiful. It's a near perfect looking slice of cake with a shiny mirror glaze on top and decorated with a small bit of white chocolate. The cake was absolute heaven. It was so rich and chocolatey. It's clearly a must for chocolate lovers. The texture was perfect. It was so silky and smooth. I just loved it. But I do regret one thing. I should have gotten coffee or an espresso to pair with the dessert. The rich, chocolatey flavors of the cake were just begging for the flavors of coffee. Still, the dessert was a joy to eat.
That really was so good. That cake was excellent, so rich, but just perfectly baked. I love that. Perfect ending to a great lunch.
After finishing, I was presented with the bill, which came to $104.52, but with my tip, I spent about $124. To me, it was well worth it.
My. So that mutton chop has certainly lived up to the hype. That was fantastic, and that whole meal was incredible. I love Keens. Going back to the restaurant has kind of reaffirmed for me that Keens is my favorite steakhouse in NYC, at least among the places that I've tried. There's still so many places that I do have to dine at, but yeah, Keens is a special place, no doubt about it. I think mutton can be intimidating for some people just because it's not really offered really anywhere else, but believe me, it is worth trying. It's so good. Plus, I love the fact that Keens offers that taste of mutton. I think that's a really nice and approachable and affordable way to try their most signature dish. But you know me, I like going all the way, so I had to get their full mutton chop. And that was a marvelous piece of meat. My only regret with this lunch is that I should have gotten coffee or an espresso with my cake because that would have been the most perfect pairing. However, that's a pretty small mistake. I'm gonna get some coffee right now. In summation, there's a reason why the mutton chop at Keens has endured all these years while it has typically fallen out of favor with most other restaurants in this country, and that's because Keens' example is incredible. To sum it up, as if it wasn't obvious, I had a fantastic meal at Keens, I love their mutton chop, and I will definitely be back.